us? And why do we have this insatiable desire to learn and know more?
Yeah.
What is it?
Why does this, however many 3 pounds of gray matter in my brain, why is that able to plummet the intricacies of the universe?
Right.
Right. Like, and I think that's ultimately the questions that we should be asking in terms of, you matter more than you are matter. There's something going on.
There's something going on with all of us.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Trista, and in today's video, what I would like to do is really talk about the Joe Rogan and Wesley Huff interview or podcast interview and just give my 2 cents. Now, before I get started, I really would love to talk about Psalms 1 through 4, and it goes like this. Psalms 19, verses 1 through 4. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the expanse proclaims the work of his hands. Day after day, they pour out speech. Night after night, they communicate knowledge. There is no speech. There are no words. Their voice is not heard. Their message has gone out to the whole earth, and their words to the ends of the world. In the heavens, he has pitched a tent for the sun. Now, I wanted to talk about that because David notices how vast and awesome God is in his creation. And for David to notice that and write it down and be so moved by how good God is, we are like that as well, because we are like that when we ask questions about ourselves, like, what is my purpose here, and what are my gifts, who God is, who am I? And so these are natural questions that we naturally have, and I love just how David describes God and how the goodness of God and how vast and awesome God is. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because Joe Rogan does that in this interview in this podcast interview with Wesley Huff, and I just love how it all unfolds. And even the question that Joe Rogan asks Wes, and even the question that Wes asks Joe Rogan, like, exactly what are your thoughts after listening to me, and even some of the things that you've heard about Jesus, like, what are your thoughts now? And I just think that is just, number one, amazing, and I just love his answer, and a very typical answer for someone that is still looking for, that still has questions, number one, and is still looking for the answer. It's almost like Joe Rogan is still not quite convinced. And I feel like a lot of us was like that, even me, even when I first, became a Christian and really had to wrestle with a lot of thoughts, and even now. Anyway, I just want to talk about that and just showcase, showcase my 2 cents. Now, in my last video, I had an interview with Shonda Bullwright with Her Faith Inspires, and that was part 1. Part 2 will be next week. And so I really want to talk about this podcast because I really feel like it's interesting, because Wes, if you don't know anything about Wesley Huff is a Canadian Christian apologist, and he's basically a scholar that has studied a lot of the old Christian documents and manuscripts, and he became really viral and popular when he debated Billy Carson. Billy Carson is just someone who is extremely interesting, and he also made claims that he debunked Christianity because of the documents and manuscripts that he has read. And so you can go on Wesley Huff's YouTube channel or even look at some of his videos on him debating Wesley Huff debating Billy Carson. And even not only did Wesley Huff debated him and just pretty much destroyed him, and not in like an arrogant way, like he was really nice about it, but then Billy Carson sued Wesley Huff, and so that went viral. Joe Rogan heard about it, and so that's how he got on his podcast. And so I just think that is really interesting how an actual scholar, and he's super young, he's like 33, and he talks about it on the 3-hour Joe Rogan podcast, and I thought it was super interesting. It's very nerdy, and how they talk about a lot of the manuscripts and even just different locations and different people. And I first thought that it was really super interesting. And so I want to talk about that just a little bit and just, again, share my thoughts, show different clips of the podcast. You could definitely check it out. Definitely check out Wesley Huff's channel as well, because he goes more into a lot of debunking a lot of Billy Carson's claims as well. And even the video that went viral. Next video of the interview, and then I'm going to talk about it.
Because of this claim that they say they saw Jesus resurrected. Like, there's something different that goes on there, that they're like, this is a miracle, right? Dead people don't usually rise from the dead.
So what is your personal belief when it comes to the resurrection? What do you think happened? Do you have a belief, or do you just try to interpret the text and try to see what is the message?
Well, I think, so as a historian, I do think it is a historical question. You have a guy who objectively lived, he objectively died, and then individuals close to his inner circle claim that they see him not dead.
Right.
Again.
This is a highly unusual activity.
Highly unusual.
Right. So, but it's hard when you're dealing with illiterate populations, you're dealing with thousands of years of time, you're dealing with an oral tradition, and then you have us sitting here talking about it in 2024, trying to figure it at the end of 2024, trying to figure this out. Literally the end.
Yeah.
Last couple of days. It's very difficult for anybody who thinks of themselves as an intelligent person who's secular to even entertain the possibility that someone died and come back to life.
And I get that. But we've already talked about the fact that we don't think that the only thing that exists is matter and motion. We as in you and I, right? Like, we believe that there's something else going on in this world that's a little bit crazy.
There's something else.
And that to, I think, exclude that, I think excludes something that you're kind of putting blinders on for. And you do have, I mean, you're right in terms of all of these ancient conventions and the ways that things were spread around. But the Gospels are written in the lifetime of the eyewitnesses. And they're written in this period of time where you have groups of individuals who could have fact-checked those things. So,
how do you fact-check someone coming back from the dead?
Well,
how many people saw his body, right?
Well, Paul says that 400 people saw him all at once.
400 people saw the crucifixion?
No, saw the resurrected Jesus. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says that Jesus appeared to the disciples, and then he appeared to 400 people all at once. I mean, if we read the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Luke and Acts, so same author wrote these both documents, he says that Jesus was walking around teaching them for 40 days after he was resurrected from the dead. And so these are written within a time period when you have people who would have seen Jesus's ministry, who were there, say, at something like the feeding of the 5,000, who could have been able to verify or debunk some of these things that are being said. And you go from a bunch of scared guys who, because Jesus wasn't the only messianic figure who arose and claimed to be the Messiah.
Right.
There were a number of individuals both prior to and after Jesus, but they die and the movement dies with them.
So I love these type of questions that Joe Rogan asked because, you know, it just shows that he is interested. He's willing to have these type of conversations. And that is what I love. I love that people that are not just stuck on one particular idea. I love people that are willing to have these conversations. And the type of question that Joe Rogan asked is an interesting one because a lot of us has asked that same question. And then what Wesley Huff talked about was the fact that even if you had other Messianic or, you know, types of people that were just like Jesus back then, their particular movement or, you know, teaching or idea died with the person that was there. And so this type of teaching of Jesus lasted thousands of years. And then they go deeper into that, which I love. I love that. And so what do you guys think? Do you guys think that Wes was right? Could you have answered it a different way? You know, I love that because it's almost causing the, you know, more juices to flow and more questions to answer. And so this next clip will be the last one. And then I love that the answer or the question that Wes gives him, which is, Okay, so now, what are your thoughts now? Now that you heard my answer and you've kind of, we have established this. So what are your thoughts now?
In all of this, what do you think of Jesus? Like, in terms of your own, like, journeying and trying to find answers to ultimate questions. What do you think of the historical person of Jesus?
Well, it certainly seems like there's a lot of people that believe that there was this very exceptional human being that existed. So the question is, what does that mean? Does it mean he was the Son of God? Does it mean he was just some completely unique human being that had this vision of humanity and this way of educating people and spreading this ideology that would ultimately change the way human beings interact with each other forever? So what is he the Son of God? Well, are we all? That's another question, right? Do we all have that inside of us? Do we all have that ability to change everything around us inside of us? Do we all have that unique connection to the divine? And is he a representation of the best version of that? Or was he an actual person that was the Son of God? And is it important?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, what does it mean? Just the fact that it's a question to ponder is a miracle in itself, in a way. Just the fact that there's this concept of this person that died for our sins, that's the Son of God. But you have to you have to believe in a bunch of stuff to go that way. Like, just the concept of that is interesting to people, because what it can do to people is offer them a very unique way to change the way they feel about the world itself. And if you do follow that, I know a lot of Christians are hardcore Christians. They're some of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. So it does work. Right? Like, if you do live like a Christian and you do follow the principles of Christ, you will have a richer, more love-filled life. So it is true, right? But you have to submit to this concept that this guy was the child of God who came down to earth, let himself be crucified, came back from the dead, explained a bunch of stuff for people, and then said, all right, see you when I come back.
And you don't know how you can wrap your head around that particular claim.
And if he came back, here's the thing. If he came back, who the fuck would believe him today? With all the fake news and all the CGI and AI, like, imagine. That would be the most bizarre thing of all time. If we get to a point where artificial reality is indiscernible from regular reality, and Jesus chooses to come back at that moment, boy, that's the ultimate test of faith, right? When it's impossible to discern. If we really reach a point where virtual reality is indistinguishable from regular reality, which we're probably 100 years away from that or something. Like, how far, maybe not even that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's probably why Jesus came in the 1st century and not the 21st century.
But imagine if that's the big catch. Like, Jesus does return, but when he returns, we're just so confused that we can't even tell.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's how he returns in the first place. Maybe he returns through AI.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the portal to Jesus.
I don't know anything about that. Yeah, I mean,
that scares the shit out of me.
I really appreciate, guys that you're friends with, right? Like the Jordan Petersons and the Douglas Murrays of the world, or, the Tom Hollands, not the Spider-Man actor, the historian, who talk about this stuff. I think I really like the way that Jordan Peterson articulates it, but I think he misses the forest for the trees.
How so?
In that he sees Jesus as an archetype. And I don't think actually even Jesus gives you the opportunity to see him as the archetype. Because I have this love-hate relationship with all of Peterson's stuff, because he seems to get so much right where he walks up to the line, but he doesn't want to cross over.
And is the crossover, you think, connected to a life in academia? Or
no.
What do you think it is?
I wonder, and I'd love to talk to him about this, like, how do you remedy this issue that, because he seems to think that the concept of Jesus as an example is more important than the actual flesh and blood 1st century itinerant Jewish preacher who was crucified and rose from the dead physically, which is the claim of the Gospels and the rest of the New Testament. That's That's an example for us to look on and live by. But I actually think that Jesus condemns moralism. And ultimately what I see Peterson doing is looking at Jesus as a moral example. And if Jesus is nothing but a moral example, then you can save yourself and you don't actually need a savior. And so I think actually Jesus would have critiqued that because Jesus was very against moralism.
And how do you define Jesus being against moralism? Like, what do you mean by that exactly?
Well, Jesus looks at the religiosity of his day with like particular groups like the Pharisees and the Sadducees, who are these other groups of Jews during his day. So we talked about the Essenes, who actually aren't mentioned in the Bible, but there are other groups like the Pharisees, who are like lay scholars, and the Sadducees, who are professional priest scholars. And he's constantly critiquing the fact that they have this hypocritical religiosity to them, where they're doing things like tithing their mint leaves, like to make sure that they get all of, this is where we get the idea of the letter of the law versus the intention of the law. Like Jesus critiques them for that because he says, you're trying to do everything right and you're missing the point. So one of the things he says is like, if your donkey falls in a ravine on the Sabbath, do you pull it out? Or is that work? Like, what's the point of the Sabbath? Is it to not do any work? Like, is it to make sure that you're not working too hard because you might be breaking the Sabbath? Or like, what is the point? He says, like, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And that there's this intention. This is the whole Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5, is he keeps saying, you have heard it said, but I say, and he refers to the Mosaic law. And it looks like he's critiquing the Mosaic law, but he's not actually. He's getting back to the intention of the law. So when he says, you know, you have heard it said, do not commit murder, but I say to you, anybody who harbors a hate for their brother in their heart has already committed murder. And what he's getting to is like, what's the intention? What's the meaning of the law that God gives to you? Because the law is like a mirror. It shows you how dirty you are. But his critique is he's like, you guys are trying to clean yourself with a mirror. That's stupid. It's just going to, if anything, it's going to make you more messy. Like, get in the shower. The law is not what cleans you. The law is what reveals that you're dirty. And so in that sense, I think, you know, if Jesus is a moral example, it actually misses what I think Jesus actually said about what his purpose was, in that you can't do enough to actually live up to the standard that God holds you to. And so if you keep striving, you're actually going to wear yourself out and be exhausted.
Like atheists.
I didn't say you did, Joe.
A lot of them go crazy.
Again, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments below, and let me know some other topics. I am definitely looking for some other topics to really talk about. I have so much that I want to talk about, but I really want to, you know, share or hear from you guys. And I hope you guys are having a really great new year. And I want to pray for all those that are living in LA. I pray that you guys are safe and protected. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until my next video. God bless.